Welcome to County Board Wrap-Up, where each month we chat with County Board Chair Libby Garvey about some of the highlights the board took at its May meeting. On today's show, we will be discussing the CIP, and we'll find out what that is, vehicle storage facilities, Connect Arlington, farmers markets, and more. With us here today, as always, is Libby Garvey, Chair of the Arlington County Board. We also will be joined later by Board Member Katie Cristol for part of our discussion. Libby, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, thank you.
So you do a great job of coming here and telling us and explaining some of the actions that the board took at the last meeting.
I try.
And there was, but before we get to some of the big items, there was one item that you actually kind of
postponed.
Yes.
Yeah, that
so
we changed
do
a
you
little
want to
bit.
talk about that?
Just a little bit, and that was the blue ribbon panel that we had voted on a charge the month before, last month, and then this month we were going to be appointing members. And in between there was clearly a lot of confusion in the community about what we were doing, and we were really responding to a very important recommendation in the community's facilities report, which I've taken to carrying around with me now, just pointing out the fact that we don't have an overall strategic plan. We have a comprehensive plan that's got 11 different big plans, but those don't even include schools or social services. So we need an overall strategic plan, and we were trying to get a group together, to Blue Ribbon Panel, to give us some advice on a process on how to get to that process. And I think because we were caught up in the budget and working fast, there was really a lot of kind of confusion and really, I think, upset in the community, which we didn't want. So we took a pause, and Jay Facette made a motion. I seconded it to sort of take a pause until July, our July meeting, and we're going to take a comment from the community about the charge, and then we'll be moving forward in July.
So it sounds like you really are responding to the community's
absolutely.
Input.
I mean, this is all about the community, really. And so obviously we worked a little fast, I think, because we've had so much going on with the budget and the CIP and everything. So we're going to take a pause.
So we'll be talking to you about that in July.
You will, in July. Yeah, foreshadowing.
Well, let's move on, speaking of the community, to one of the big items, which was the manager had proposed the Capital Improvement Plan, we call it the CIP, for the next 10-year CIP. And can you explain to us, what is that, and why do we have it?
The Capital Improvement Program is it's a plan. The first 2 years, though, and it's 10 years long, and facilities take a long time to plan and to build and to do, and you need to be always thinking ahead about both what you need and what money is going to be available and how to handle it. So the first 2 years of the Capital Improvement Program, we do it every 2 years, are really kind of definite plans, and when we get finished, that's going to determine what's going to go into our bond, and we'll be asking the voters for support and whether they approve our moving forward on these. The other 8 years are really plans, and I expect those to change as we move forward. So it's really why it's a 10-year plan. It's the first 2 years that really count, because that's what we're going to be bonding, and that's what we're absolutely planning to move ahead on.
So it's kind of if an analogy to the home would be kind of a forward-looking, how would we be able to afford these big-ticket items?
Right. And like maybe in 10 years you're going to need to replace your roof. Well, you need to plan for that, because that's a huge expense. But you don't need to do it right away. But you need to be thinking about it, and that's what And then maybe right now, maybe the front porch step is gone. You got to fix that right away. So there are things like that you have the short term and the longer term.
What are some of the highlights for this 10-year CIP, and including the first 2 years?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that will be of most interest is the part that deals with transportation. We're going to be having a transportation development plan is coming to us next month, and there's some exciting things coming forward. We've kind of been a long time in waiting about what we're going to do with Columbia Pike, and what I think we're going to see. We haven't seen it exactly. This was just an overall presentation, but a one-seat ride from the west end of Columbia Pike all the way to Crystal City.
So in other words, somebody would be able to get
on a bus and just ride it all the way to Crystal City, which they can't do right now. We also are adding a lot more art buses throughout the county. I was just talking to someone today up in a part of the county that really isn't served by buses much at all. Her daughter needs to get to work downtown. There's no way for her really to do it with transportation right now, with public transportation. So we need to improve what we do elsewhere as well. And then finally, I'm looking forward to, on the buses, we're looking at some of the aspects of a modern bus system. So signal prioritization. So our ambulances and emergency vehicles can do that now, and we'll have it for the buses too, which is when you come up to a signal, say the light turns yellow, you can hold that for you to go through the light so that the bus can keep moving.
So the bus could
control the signal a little
could
bit.
talk to the signal and say, here I am, let me through.
And that's just a way to increase speed. In Los Angeles, they designed a system like this, and actually in 18 months had it up and running, and they were able to increase their speeds by 20% and their ridership by 40% in 18 months.
Well, that's a great way to prioritize the bus, which holds many people, over the cars, which hold much
Absolutely.
fewer.
And of course, the other big thing, which it really isn't our CIP, because at the same time we're developing ours, the school system is developing their capital improvement program. And of course, they're looking at the schools they need to be bringing online. And we will be, while they have their own CIP and we have our own CIP, it's really important that the two come together.
Yes,
so
of
we're going to be
course.
meeting jointly with the schools. And right now with our the huge increase in students we've got, I expect that to play a major role in actually all of our decisions about how we handle our capital moving forward.
Now, you mentioned the bonding. So the county will come before the voters in November with bond referenda. And what are some of the highlights of that
Well, we're
referendum?
determining that now, and that will be in July. And often we will say for parks, for example. And included in that will be land acquisition. While the voters will be approving it for parks, the money can be used for different things, but we like to say what it is we're planning to do. And one of the things I think you will see here is an increase, about a 50% increase in land acquisition costs so that we can basically buy green space. Sometimes it's a house that's within a park. If you look at our park borders, sometimes there's a little divot in here and there's a house there. And if that comes on the market and seems reasonable, often we'll buy it, and it just helps finish out the parks. But another thing that we're not increasing our land acquisition for parks as much as parks people would like, but it's important to look in this. One of the things we're putting is $12 million shared with the schools so that when they build the new Thomas Jefferson, parking will be underground, and that will pay for covering the top with a field. We're actually increasing by an acre. So that's not officially parks acquisition, but effectively it is.
What a creative way.
Oh yeah, and we've got to be creative with 26 square miles and everything
Yes.
going on. We have to be very
Yes,
creative.
exactly.
Yeah, we do. So we're going to be working this through, and I, encourage people can watch our work sessions now, which of course that's a new thing that we're video streaming our work sessions, so people can easily follow what's going
on Arlington TV.
That's right.
Now at the June meeting, at the May meeting, that was the manager proposing the CIP.
Right.
So now what happens? There'll be
So now we have a lot of work sessions, so it's the manager's proposal right now, and by the time we get to July and adoption, it will be the board's CIP. And we will be having a public hearing, I think it's the 22nd of June.
June 22nd, right here in this building,
Yeah,
Courthouse
we will.
Plaza.
Right. And again, people don't have to come to a public hearing. They can send us emails. They can buttonhole us at the farmers market that we're going to talk about later. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to connect with board members, and we're really happy to hear from people. But this is a good community conversation. In some ways, this is the biggest thing we really do. We do the budget every year, but this is huge. It's looking out 10 years.
And the facilities, and the major projects.
And a lot going on.
And you will move toward adoption of the CIP in July.
It's in July, and that determines what then goes on the ballot in November for approval. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you
looking
so
forward to
much. Another item that the board handled in this last meeting was the lease for a new vehicle storage site on 4 Mile Run.
Right.
Now, what is that about?
That actually is I think, a great Arlington story in some ways. We are doing some work on our bus facility down on Eade Street, and while we're doing that, the buses had to move and be somewhere. So the only place our staff could find was part of what's really Jenny Dean Park. The park needs work, but and that's not the best place to be putting buses. So,
and we know how important our parks are.
Our parks are very important, but we got to have buses. I mean, this is part of this dealing with 26 square miles. And the buses will go back, but then actually we're doing the trade center. We're going to be working there. We're going to have to move that equipment somewhere. Well, some very sharp-eyed folks in the community came to us and said, hey, there's a property here you could lease. You should look at that. So we did, and we're leasing. It's a 7-year lease. It's by the CubeSmart, which is right off 395.
395,
yeah.
Right, you can see it, yes.
It's the same area, but it's not close to homes. It's right off the highway. It's not going to really interfere with anything. And so we're getting that as a lease. We have to prepare it. And once we're ready, the buses and the things will be moved off of the park and into that place that we're leasing. and then finally we can get to work to preparing that
What
park.
a great idea. I mean, this is the ultimate crowdsourcing, isn't it?
Kind
it's
of.
Like getting those great ideas.
Well, and it's the people that live right in the area
And they
that
know
realize
the area,
Yes, exactly. And we responded. So that's good. I wish we could have responded a little faster. It probably will be January before we get all of those buses off and can really free up the park. But we're moving in the right direction.
So the Jenny Dean Park is important for another reason, I understand.
Yeah.
The whole
4
planning.
Mile Valley, right? We're just starting that whole planning process, which is really very exciting. We just actually in this meeting appointed the members of that. It's going to be chaired by Charlie Montfort. And Charles lives in Fairlington now, but he's been very active in Arlington on the Planning Commission and really knows how these processes work. And now this is his neighborhood too. So he's going to be chairing that, and we've got input from businesses and citizens, and it's a whole look at the area, and I think it's going to be just spectacular when we get done. It's an area that's needed attention for a long time.
Yes.
So I'm pleased that we're finally moving forward on that. So I think
And it's
in a
great
few
to be
years-
looking at it holistically. like that.
Holistically,
Yes.
absolutely. And that was a change actually, because there was the park and then there was an area, so it was like we were heading towards 2 separate processes, and we sort of said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Let's do it all
Yes,
together.
exactly. Great. Wonderful. So there's
Yeah.
real progress
I
on
think
that.
so. I think so.
Okay. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll talk about an exciting new partnership that the county board authorized and some updates on the Stratford School site. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up. We're here today with Arlington County Board Chair Libby Garvey, who is delving into some of the details of actions the county board took at its May meeting. One of the items that the county board approved was an agreement with the University of Maryland, so you need to
Yeah.
explain to us about
Yeah.
that, on Connect Arlington.
Yeah.
And well, let's start with what is Connect Arlington?
Right, why don't we, that's probably a good place to start. And I'll start really back, going back years ago, 5, 10 years, we have been, every time we're tearing up the streets, Washington Gas Line's doing it, Dominion Power, we're doing it for water and sewer, number of streets, we have been putting down conduit, big plastic tube, and it's empty. And the point of that was to thread what we call dark fiber, which is, that's how the internet works, is it runs on this
So
fiber.
taking advantage of the hole being open and then
Exactly, and we've been doing that for years, and now we have a 10-mile spine around Arlington. And what's so special about dark fiber? Well, if you think about it, sometimes at home you're trying to video stream a movie or something, and maybe it flicks in and out, or you got to wait for your computer. That's because you're sharing your fiber optic line with somebody else. It gets kind of crowded. It's just the speed. It's about the speed of the internet. So we're talking super high-speed internet. In effect, in this conduit are lots and lots of little tiny fibers that we put through. Each one would be dedicated to somebody who buys it, licenses it. And think of it as having your own lane on a superhighway all around the country. So when you want to go, say you want to go to California, you hop on the highway and you just fly down your own lane.
No buffering.
No buffering. Nobody gets there in front of you. You can go as fast as you want because nobody and nothing is getting on that lane. It's your lane. And that's what the fiber optics is doing. And that's our Connect Arlington, which is really exciting. Now, Maryland has something called the Mid-Atlantic Crossroads, which is their multi-state connection with the fibers. And they needed an on-ramp. They needed a way to get to this group. We're it. Because we're the only jurisdiction in the region, in the area. There really aren't very many even in the country yet that have this. And it's really very exciting. It's exciting for the University of Maryland, allows them to have that on-ramp. It's exciting for us because we get to do a little piggybacking with this.
well, it gives us an on-ramp too, right?
Well, it does, and yes.
And our folks.
Right, our folks. And also, it's just the start of what I think will be a great benefit for our businesses here and attract more and more of the high-tech companies because they too, they've got to pay a fee, but not that much. And it's actually to a private provider that links with us. It's kind of confusing how it all works out legally, but basically available to them is their own dedicated lane anywhere they want to go in the country on the fiber. And it really enhances the speed and the amount of information that they can move around. And that's really what it's all about these days. So it's very exciting.
I would think that would have tremendous interest from businesses, from high-tech entities,
government
agencies, secure connection.
Absolutely, our defense industry. Yeah, no, it's really a big. It's the wave of the future. We're kind of ahead on this wave, which I think is a good thing. Actually, it's a great thing for us, but great for the businesses that are here and great for us. So this is exciting. This is kind of the first big step on getting Connect Arlington up and running and connecting.
Well, let me ask you about another item that the board handled at this last meeting, and that is that the county board gave some important guidance to the county manager on the school's plans to rebuild the Stratford School, and that's going to be rebuilt into a neighborhood middle school.
It is, and actually the guidance we were really giving was to the schools, not to the manager. And what typically happens is when the school system is building a new school, they get their plans and the school board votes and approves the plans, and they move forward and they do a lot of designs, and they come to us for a permit with the plans pretty well done. What was happening with this particular project was it was clear there was a lot of controversy about really to build or not to build a driveway. If anybody's familiar with that site, you know, you have to get to it off of Vacation Lane. It's narrow, little neighborhood streets. It's very hard to get in and out of that school, but it's right on Old Dominion Drive. So a number of people, including the school board, actually voted to approve their design with the drive onto a new drive onto Old Dominion, which would really help all of the traffic jams.
So bring the traffic in that way.
And there was a lot of discussion. I think we talked for hours about this, actually hearing from people, and really there were good arguments on both sides. But in the end, it was a 4-1 head nod, because we actually didn't quite vote.
I see.
But a head nod to let the schools know that 4 of the board members were fine with them coming forward with the drive, proceeding with the plans that they already had. And I think it will, I was one of the 4, and I think it really will improve the traffic flow, which actually I think will encourage people to walk more. This was the issue. If you build a driveway, people will drive their cars because you make it easy for them. If you make it hard enough for them, they won't drive cars. And I understand that theory, but if you're a parent and things are like really hard and difficult with cars going every which way, which is the way it was going to end up being, I think, without that drive, you're not going to put your child out on the street because it doesn't feel safe. So then it just adds to the whole confusion and problem. So I think the drive will actually improve it and actually get more of our students to be walking. So we'll see.
So the county board's head nods and guidance enables the school to move forward and finalize those plans.
Yes, and which they would have done anyway. What I was so worried about, and which is why this was an unusual kind of hearing, we are all worried, schools were particularly worried. They'd come to us, they'd have the designs all done already, they'd come to the board, there would be a whole outcry because a lot of our commissions were not comfortable with the drive, and the board would have said, oh, well, we're not going to approve it with the drive. And then the schools would have had to go back to the drawing board. Yeah, it would have spent it'd be months of work and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we just wanted to get that cleared up now so that they knew how to proceed forward and we don't waste time and money. So I think it was a good hearing, a good discussion, pretty controversial, but I think it came out fine in the end, and really the point was to get to a decision so the schools know what it is they need to do.
And here again, it sounded like the county board really wanted to listen and have input from the community.
Right, and we did, It was a good discussion.
Well, let's move on to another topic, which is the county board voted to increase the Transient Occupancy Tax, the TOT. And what is that?
Well, when you check into a hotel here and are at a hotel, you have a little tax on your bill. I mean, there are a number of taxes, and there was an add-on tax that we were able to put on for Arlington, and that went into our hospitality budget and actually helping to promote Arlington and bring more people here.
Oh, it's tourism.
Tourism trade, yeah, which is a huge part of our local economy, and actually huge for the state as well. And a number of years ago, we had a little kerfuffle over hot lanes on 395. And the outcome of that kerfuffle was that the legislature in Richmond was not very happy with us. And so basically decided to punish Arlington and said, you can't do that tax anymore. And then if we wanted to help attract business, which is important for us, we had to be finding the money in our own budget. We weren't allowed to do this add-on. So times have changed a bit. I think it helped to have John Weissett on the board now, and he has got some contacts down in Richmond, and I think it is a very new board. Also, the state has an interest because they would like to have that extra revenue too. So in the end, they finally agreed that we were going to be allowed to tax ourselves, if you will, and it moved forward. So it just adds 0.25 on the bill. I mean, people who are paying the bills really will hardly notice it. But it all adds up a little bit. You get a lot of little bits. It adds up a lot. It's about 1.25 million, I think, on our budget each year that we can then turn back to attracting businesses and tourists here.
Now, the business community, the hotel, the visitor community here in Arlington supported.
Totally supported it. Totally supported it. And they were part of our partners in lobbying in Richmond. Yeah, it was really a full court press and a team effort. And I think a little time going by helped. And I think people realize it really is in everybody's interest. So we've got it, and that's great because tourism is very important to us, and of course
We're
important to
one
the
of the
state.
top, or maybe the top tourism destination in the Commonwealth.
And we should be, probably in the country. I mean, and one of the things we like to talk about is, people come here to see our nation's capital, which is a beautiful place, and as it should be. But we always say the best views of Washington, D.C. are right here in Virginia.
Absolutely
Yeah,
true.
yeah, and it's really true. I mean, we have spectacular views. If you're actually there, you don't see it because you're inside it. But from here, it looks beautiful.
Yes.
It's great.
Well, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll take another short break, and when we come back, Board Member Katie Cristol will join us to talk about more farmers markets coming your way. Welcome back. And now we have a special treat. We're joined not only by Arlington County Board Chair Libby Garvey, but for the first time by Board Member Katie Cristol as well. Katie is here to talk about farmers markets. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today
It's a real pleasure, Diana. Thank you.
Great to have you here.
for our little chat.
Yeah.
So the county board at this last meeting took some actions to expand the areas where farmers markets can be hosted. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So as you may know, the county has 11 farmers markets all throughout Arlington, but few or none actually, in fact, north of 66. And part of that has been because they have only been allowed or permitted by the zoning ordinance in commercial areas. So we had a number of neighbors partner with Field to Table, which is a nonprofit, and come to Arlington with a proposal to have a farmers market on the campus of Marymount University. Mm-hmm. Now, these are fantastic assets for the community. They're gathering places for people to meet neighbors. I always enjoy my own farmers market in Columbia Pike, and it's a great opportunity to provide Arlingtonians access to fresh and healthy food. But because we only allowed them in commercial spaces in our zoning ordinance, we had to take action. And so staff worked with the neighbors, as well as with Field to Table, to carefully look at our zoning ordinance to allow farmers markets in areas that are predominantly residential or mixed use. Now, we've had to be really careful about how we do that,
Yes,
of course.
we have.
Yes, and craft that change the zoning ordinance carefully. So, for example, these kind of markets will only be allowed on areas where there is an existing public or civic or institutional use, only those places that have frontage along major streets. So we have carefully crafted it, although we do hope to be able to see more of these sprout, if you'll pardon the pun, because we think they're great assets here in Arlington.
So the zoning regulations are there for good reasons and good purposes, but it seems to me this is a case where you all looked, I mean, times change and
people love farmers
right,
markets.
so you
Yeah.
looked for a way to help.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And it works particularly because of the institutional use. There's plenty of parking already. Again, there's frontage along a major road, and so there's an ability to do the traffic flow. All the kinds of things that we think about the impacts when you are introducing a new use. In this case, it really is a win-win, I think, on the Marymount campus.
I think so.
Is
too.
there a sense of when this Marymount one might open? Hopefully this
Absolutely, later this month.
Yeah.
I believe they
great.
have a number of vendors already lined up and are ready to go. So we had a lot of people anxiously awaiting board action this week, and we are happy to be able to deliver for them.
Everybody, see you there. Yeah.
It's such a popular destination. I mean, what are some of your favorite things that you buy at the market?
Oh, always the fresh greens. Because if I
Yes.
haven't got them going in my garden, so great. And tomatoes, if I don't have I love
Well, there's
garden fresh
nothing
tomatoes.
like a
A real tomato.
real
That's
real
right.
tomato.
That's right.
A real
Absolutely.
tomato.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
markets have these heirloom tomatoes,
Oh, yeah.
which
Yeah,
are so
good.
delicious.
And a number of them will bring in vendors who are doing all kinds of interesting things.
Like
We have
goat
a-
cheese. Have you
Yes,
seen that?
and we have a fixture at the Columbia Pike Farmers Market, Number One Sons, which does all kinds of fermented foods and pickles. My husband is a lover of all types of pickles,
Yeah.
so we always appreciate the opportunity not only to get great
Yeah.
fresh produce, but to see some of our small businesses starting up
And
as well.
I think we're going to be expanding more. Don't you think we're going to get more than just this one at
I hope we will.
Marymount?
Yeah,
think so.
I hope we will.
Yeah.
So are there other, I guess somebody came to you all and
They did.
said,
They did.
we would like to
Right.
do one here.
And I
but
expect to
do
see
you,
more
Are
now.
you, oh, okay.
Yeah, now that we've changed the because before it was really very limited as to where they
Yeah,
could go. And now I
absolutely.
think we'll have more, and I think it's going to be great.
So if anyone out there has a hankering for a farmer's market, this is
Let
the
us know.
time
That's
to.
right.
Yep.
And knows of a place with an existing institutional civic use
Where it
with
won't
frontage
disrupt
on,
things too much.
on a main road.
Those are
Yeah.
important considerations.
Absolutely.
They are. So it doesn't disrupt the community and really is an asset.
Yeah, we're designing great public spaces that really do reflect sensitivity to the neighborhoods around them.
I think so.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, and
It's
thank you,
been a
Katie,
pleasure.
for
Thanks
joining
for coming,
us.
Katie.
Thank you,
It's
you,
fun
Libby
to
and
have
Diana.
her.
Yeah. Great.
Well, we've come to the end of another County Board wrap-up. I want to thank County Board Chair Libby Garvey and Board Member Katie Cristol for walking us through some of the important actions the board took. And remember, you can watch board meetings live on Verizon channels 39 and 40 and Comcast 25 and 74. You can also watch them live on the county website at arlingtonva.us. Or you can even view archived board meetings and staff reports on the county website. We hope to see you right back here next month for another County Board wrap-up.